The last thing Paige Holloway expected on a humid August Friday night was to run into her worst enemy at the rooftop bar, where she usually celebrated her victories. But there he was, Dawson Kane, in all his insufferably arrogant glory, wearing that navy blue suit that probably cost more than her Brooklyn rent, leaning against the railing like he owned the Manhattan skyline. Of course he did. Dawson acted like he owned everything. "You've got to be kidding me," Paige muttered to her best friend Shay Carlisle, while practically diving behind a group of loud executives. The movement was so abrupt that her pink Cosmopolitan nearly escaped from the glass, splashing onto the hem of her emerald green dress. "Is that Dawson?" Shay craned her neck, her brown eyes widening with that dangerous expression that meant potential gossip. "Your corporate arch-nemesis? He is not my anything," Paige hissed, frantically wiping away the pink droplets. "He's just the arrogant jerk who's been stealing my clients for 3 consecutive years. "Oh, right, sure." Shay rolled her eyes dramatically. "Just the guy you argue with at every department meeting, whose projects you critique with alarming passion, and who, let me think, you've mentioned exactly 17 times just this week." Paige nearly choked. "I do not mention him 17 times a week. Actually, it's 17 times a day, but who's counting?" Shay took a sip of her martini, amused. "Have you ever considered that maybe all this tension between you two is actually unresolved attraction?" "Attraction?" Paige felt her face burn. "Shay, I would rather be locked in a room with a swarm of angry wasps than spend 5 minutes alone with that—" "Paige Holloway." The deep, irritatingly smooth voice interrupted her passionate declaration. "Hiding now? Is that a new professional strategy?" She turned slowly, forcing a smile as fake as his humility. Dawson was less than 3 feet away, absurdly tall, 6'3" of pure arrogance, smelling of that expensive sandalwood and mint cologne that always made her brain do irrational things, with that infuriating half-smile she dreamed of erasing. Professionally, of course. Kane. She lifted her chin, refusing to look too far up and give him the satisfaction of acknowledging the height difference. "Didn't know you frequented places that served drinks with colors. Thought your menu was limited to straight whiskey and imported mineral water." Creative. He stepped closer and Paige detected the faint scent of bourbon mixed with that cologne that should be illegal. "I came to celebrate. But I see you're here too, so I'm assuming you're drowning your sorrows of defeat." "Again." Paige's blood boiled instantly. "Defeat? My project for the Brooklyn Public Library renovation was approved this morning by the city committee." "Ah, yes, that." Dawson shrugged with a studied indifference that drove her crazy. "Small municipal project. I was talking about the Daniels contract, the big one. The one you worked on for 3 months and lost, to me, at 5 o'clock this afternoon." Paige felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. Daniels Corporation. The biggest commercial design contract of the year. 3 months of obsessive research. 18 refined presentations. Countless sleepless nights creating perfect proposals. And Dawson had stolen it at the last hour with one of his politically calculated, flawless presentations. "You," she began, her voice trembling with fury, but was violently interrupted by a sharp scream that made every head on the rooftop turn simultaneously. Dawson Kane, a spectacular blonde woman wearing a cherry-red jumpsuit that appeared to have been sewn directly onto her body, marched through the crowd with the determination of a Category 5 hurricane. Her blue eyes were wild, her perfectly made-up face was red with anger, and she held a champagne flute like it was a grenade about to explode. "Amber?" Dawson visibly stepped back, the first time in 3 years that Paige had seen him lose that irritating composure. "I can explain—" "3 months!" Amber screamed, now less than 3 feet away. Conversations stopped like they'd been cut with a knife. Heads turned in unison. Smartphones magically emerged from pockets and purses. 3 months dating you, Dawson Kane, and I find out through Instagram that you call me something casual to your friends. That was taken out of context." "Out of context?" Amber's voice rose to a register that was probably scaring dogs within a 3-block radius. "Tyler from your office posted a photo from yesterday's happy hour where you're literally saying you don't want serious commitments because you're focused on your career." Paige should feel sorry. As a decent human being, she really should. But the sight of Dawson Kane, Mr. Always in total control, Mr. Walking corporate perfection, being publicly humiliated by a furious ex-girlfriend, was so deliciously satisfying that she had to bite her inner lip hard to keep from smiling openly. "Amber, please." Dawson extended his hand in a pathetic attempt to calm her. "Can we discuss this in private? There are people here." "People?" Amber laughed, a hysterical, sharp sound. "People. You humiliated me in front of the entire internet, Dawson. Everyone in your social circle knows you were stringing me along, that you never, not for 1 second, considered this serious." The crowd was growing exponentially. Paige identified at least 5 office colleagues scattered around the area, all with phones strategically positioned. Tomorrow morning, this would be the #1 topic in the hallways of Kane and Associates architecture firm. And then Dawson did something completely, absolutely, incomprehensibly unexpected. He turned. His storm gray eyes met Paige's with a desperate intensity she had never, in 3 years of mortal rivalry, seen before. And before she could cognitively process what was happening, he crossed the 6 feet between them in 3 long strides, wrapped his arm around her waist with possessive firmness, and pulled her against his solid chest. "I couldn't tell you the truth, Amber," Dawson said, his voice sounding firm but with an almost imperceptible tremor that only Paige, pressed intimately against him, could detect. "Because Paige and I are engaged. Have been for 2 months." The world literally stopped spinning. Paige's brain completely shut down. Even the warm August breeze seemed to freeze. "What?" came out simultaneously from at least 5 different mouths. Hers, Amber's, Shay's, and 2 nearby office colleagues. "Engaged," Dawson repeated with impressive conviction for someone obviously lying blatantly, his arm tightening around Paige's waist in a clear, unequivocal warning. "Cooperate now, or I sink us both." For 2 months, we kept it absolutely secret because of the company's strict policy against romantic relationships between employees competing for the same partner promotion. That's completely ridiculous," Amber stammered, but uncertainty was beginning to creep into her tear-reddened eyes. "You two hate each other. Literally everyone at the company knows you can't be in the same room without arguing." "It was a strategy," Dawson said with dangerous smoothness. And then he looked down directly into Paige's eyes with an expression so falsely loving and convincing that she genuinely considered kneeing him violently in a sensitive area. "To protect our jobs and professional reputations. Wasn't it, sweetheart? Sweetheart. Sweetheart." He just called her sweetheart in front of half of Manhattan. Paige was going to end him, slowly, creatively, and painfully. But first, in a split second, she needed to make a critical decision, destroy him immediately, here and now, in front of all these recording smartphones, or temporarily play along and destroy him later, in private, with much more sophistication and calculated revenge. Strategic vengeance won easily. "It's true," Paige heard her own voice say, surprisingly firm and controlled considering her heart was pounding like she was running a marathon. She forced herself to relax against Dawson, feeling every tense muscle of his through the expensive suit. "I'm sorry, Amber. Dawson was trying to protect my professional reputation at the office. We didn't want anyone thinking I was getting my projects and clients through inappropriate personal connections." Dawson's arm relaxed microscopically. He was clearly shocked that she'd entered the charade. "Prove it," Amber demanded abruptly, crossing her arms over her chest. Her red nails gleamed under the rooftop lights. "If you're really, truly engaged, then prove it. Now." "Prove it how exactly?" Dawson asked with visible caution. "Kiss." Amber gestured dramatically between them. "Here, now, in front of all of us. Engaged people kiss, Dawson. Especially secretly, passionately engaged people who are pretending to hate each other. So, prove it." Panic flashed through Dawson's gray eyes for exactly half a second before he recovered that irritating mask of supreme confidence. He looked at Paige, one perfectly arched eyebrow raised in silent challenge. She should back out, should expose this ridiculous lie immediately, should. Instead, Paige grabbed his expensive tie and pulled him down. The kiss was quick, 5 seconds maximum, firm, and technically chaste. Just lips pressed against lips with no other body parts touching. But the absolutely unexpected electric shock that ran from her mouth to the tips of her toes was so intense, so disturbing and disorienting, that she pulled back abruptly as if she'd accidentally touched a live wire. Dawson's eyes were wide, genuinely shocked. He'd felt it too, obviously. "Satisfied now?" Paige asked Amber, keeping her voice impressively steady despite the internal hurricane. But Amber wasn't looking at her anymore. She was staring fixedly over Dawson's broad shoulder, her blue eyes suddenly and dramatically filling with genuine tears. "You two are going to deeply regret this," she said, her voice breaking emotionally. "Both of you, I promise." And then she spun on her red stiletto heels and practically ran toward the elevator, the red jumpsuit disappearing into the murmuring crowd. The rooftop bar instantly exploded in animated speculative whispers. At least 10 people were still recording. Shay looked like she was in genuine, total shock, mouth open. Dawson immediately released Paige, taking 3 strategic steps back as if she were literally on fire. "You," he began, clearly with no idea what to say. "You owe me," Paige cut in, keeping her voice low and absolutely deadly. "Enormously, Kane. I just saved your pathetic reputation and your job from viral humiliation that would destroy your career, and now you're going to—" "Dawson! Paige!" Both froze simultaneously. That specific voice, that particularly terrifying voice, belonged to exactly one person in New York City. Vivian Kane, Dawson's mother, founder and CEO of Kane and Associates architecture firm. The most powerful and intimidating woman Paige had ever met in her entire professional life. And she was crossing the rooftop toward them with a radiant, absolutely terrifying smile on her elegantly made-up face. "Mom," Dawson began, visibly paling under his California tan. "This isn't what—" "I knew it!" Vivian practically shouted, reaching them and simultaneously grabbing both their hands with surprising strength for a 60-year-old woman wearing a Chanel dress. "I absolutely knew there was something chemical and intense between you two. The constant tension at the office, the passionate arguments at every meeting, the obsessive competition. It all makes perfect sense now. Oh, my dear, dear children, I'm so immensely happy and relieved." "Mrs. Kane," Paige tried desperately. "Vivian, please, my dear future daughter-in-law." Vivian's gray eyes, identical to Dawson's, sparkled with that dangerous, determined gleam that Paige recognized perfectly from board meetings when she had an idea that absolutely no one would dare contest. "After all, you're going to officially become part of the Kane family, and I want to know absolutely everything. How did it happen? When did you realize? Have you set any date for the ceremony?" Dawson and Paige exchanged looks of pure, absolute panic. "Actually, Mom," Dawson began. "Tomorrow," Vivian announced with the authority of someone accustomed to having every word obeyed, and Paige's heart literally stopped beating. "You're getting married tomorrow afternoon." "What?" came out in terrified unison. "Tomorrow," Vivian repeated, already pulling her iPhone from her Hermes clutch. "Saturday at 3 in the afternoon. I have all the necessary contacts in the city. I can get an expedited special license. My only son has finally found a woman truly worthy of him. A strong, intelligent, talented, independent woman. And I absolutely will not risk anything or anyone interfering with or delaying this." "Mom, you can't just—" "I can, and definitely will." Vivian was already dialing fiercely. "Robert, yes, it's me. I need to collect that huge favor you've owed me since 2019. A wedding ceremony. Tomorrow, Saturday afternoon. Yes, I know perfectly well it's the weekend. That's exactly why I'm collecting the favor you owe me." Paige felt the concrete rooftop floor completely disappear beneath her feet. This couldn't possibly be actually happening. It was a nightmare. It had to be. Dawson looked like a man about to vomit or faint. Possibly both. 3 o'clock at my Upper East Side residence. Vivian continued cheerfully, still on the phone. "Intimate and elegant, just close family and essential friends. Maybe 60, 70 people maximum." She hung up and looked at them with radiant expectation. "Is 70 too intimate for a Kane? I can easily expand to 150. 70? Paige practically screamed, completely losing her professional composure. "It's practically minimalist by Kane's social standards," Vivian said as if explaining basic math to a child. "Now, Paige, dear, do you need an appropriate dress? I know a boutique on Madison Avenue that can work absolute miracles overnight for me. And Dawson, your father will want to urgently discuss the financial details and the—" "Mom," Dawson interrupted, and for the first time since Paige had known him, he sounded genuinely, completely desperate. "Please, can we discuss all these details at home? Paige and I need to process absolutely all of this." Of course, my dears," Vivian dramatically kissed both of Dawson's cheeks, then Paige's, who was completely rigid and in shock, and practically gracefully floated toward the elevator, already dialing another number. "Tomorrow at 3 sharp, children. Don't you dare be late to your own wedding." For exactly 45 seconds after Vivian disappeared into the elevator, Dawson and Paige just stood completely motionless, looking at each other with absolutely identical expressions of pure existential dread. "You," Paige finally said, her voice dangerously, supernaturally calm, "just engaged me, without my consent, without my prior knowledge, in front of half of Manhattan's professional elite. And now your completely crazy, controlling mother thinks we're getting married tomorrow in less than 24 hours. I panicked completely." Dawson ran both hands through his perfectly styled hair, completely destroying that irritating look. Amber was recording everything. It was going to go viral. It would be a complete human resources disaster. "So you brilliantly decided that faking an engagement with me would somehow be less disastrous? It seemed like a logical solution in the heat of the moment. You," Paige declared with absolute conviction, "are a fool. A complete, total, and monumental fool. And now we have less than 24 hours to figure out how to undo this catastrophic mess before I officially become Paige Kane, which is literally, without exaggeration, my most terrifying nightmare." "You honestly think I want this?" Dawson retorted defensively. "Marrying you would be like voluntarily signing a lifetime contract to go progressively insane." "Great. Then we're in complete agreement." Paige grabbed her clutch. "You're going to call your controlling mother right now and tell her the whole truth." "I can't do that." Dawson looked genuinely tormented. "She would never ever forgive me for lying so blatantly, and it would catastrophically affect the company, my position, the internal politics. Not my problem." "Paige." Dawson grabbed her wrist, his fingers warm against her skin, his gray eyes intensely serious. "Please, just give me exactly 24 hours to resolve this properly. After tomorrow's ridiculous ceremony, we can arrange an extremely quick express divorce. Publicly say we realized it was too rushed and—" "You want me to actually legally marry you?" Paige asked, absolutely incredulous. "It's just a signature on a legal paper." Dawson was starting to sound desperate. "Technically valid, but completely without real emotional meaning. Then we annul it in 2 weeks. Nobody gets truly hurt and—" "I hate you," Paige interrupted with crystal clarity. "I want you to know and understand this deeply. I hate you more intensely than I've hated any human being in my entire 29 years of life." "Technically? Is that a yes?" Paige looked at those storm gray eyes, irritatingly, criminally beautiful, gray like winter clouds, not that she'd specifically noticed or memorized before, and realized 3 things simultaneously. 1. She really had no viable choice. Publicly exposing the lie now would be a catastrophic professional disaster for both of them. 2. Dawson Kane was going to owe her enormously for the rest of his miserable life. 3. That kiss had been disturbing, electrifying, completely unexpected, and she needed to forget it immediately and permanently. "I want this officially in writing," she said finally, with absolute firmness. "A complete legal contract, specifying exactly how this will work operationally, how long precisely it will last, and exactly what you'll owe me when it finally ends." "Done." Dawson was already grabbing his iPhone. "I'll have my personal attorney prepare complete documentation by midnight, and you're paying in full for my wedding dress. Obviously. And you," Paige stepped dangerously close, poking his solid chest with her index finger, "are going to hand over the Daniels contract to me. When this officially ends, the project is exclusively mine." Dawson visibly hesitated. That was the first moment of true, real resistance. "Daniels is legitimately mine," he said low, intense. "Daniels, or I call your mother right now, this exact second, and tell her the whole truth about this ridiculous charade." Over the phone, in front of everyone, they stared at each other, pure hostility and electric tension crackling intensely in the warm air between them. "You're absolutely diabolical," Dawson murmured. "You forcibly engaged me against my will," Paige retorted without hesitation. "So yes, Dawson Kane, I'm diabolical. Do we have an official agreement?" Tense silence. Then very slowly, Dawson extended his right hand. "We have an agreement." Paige shook his hand firmly, consciously ignoring the unexpected warmth of his large palm against hers, ignoring how his pulse visibly accelerated under her fingers, completely ignoring the absurd fact that in less than 24 hours, she would be legally married to her worst professional enemy. "Congratulations, Kane," she said, smiling like a dangerous shark. "You just officially won the most vindictively determined bride in all of New York." And then she turned and left the rooftop with dignity, leaving Dawson Kane standing there alone, looking exactly like a man who had just realized in horror that he'd made an irreversible pact with the devil. A devil who wore 4-inch heels and had a truly frightening talent for holding grudges. This was going to be an epic disaster. Paige hadn't slept. Not one single minute. She'd tried. She'd really, genuinely tried. But every time she closed her eyes, all she could see was Dawson Kane's infuriatingly handsome face, that desperate grab at the rooftop, and the absolutely mortifying reality that in approximately 12 hours, she would be standing in front of 70 witnesses legally binding herself to her worst enemy. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Again, Dawson Kane. Contract attached. Read carefully. Attorney reviewed. Airtight. Dawson Kane. Also, dress fitting at 9 a.m. Mom's orders. Boutique address below. Dawson Kane. We need to coordinate our story. Call me when you wake up. Dawson Kane. Assuming you can sleep. I can't. Paige stared at that last message for a full 30 seconds. So he was suffering too. Good. She opened the contract attachment, her interior design background making her appreciate the clean formatting even as the content made her want to scream into a pillow. Temporary marriage agreement between Dawson Michael Kane, Party A, and Paige Alexandra Holloway, Party B. Purpose: to maintain professional reputations and family relationships through a temporary legal marriage. Duration: minimum 14 days, maximum 90 days from date of ceremony. Terms: living arrangements, separate residences maintained, no cohabitation required except for mandatory family events. Public appearances: both parties will present as happily married couple, at minimum two events per week, as determined by mutual agreement. Physical boundaries: no physical intimacy beyond what is necessary for public credibility. Hand-holding, brief kisses, etc. Financial separation: all assets remain separate. No commingling of finances. Professional considerations: upon termination of agreement, Party A will transfer Daniels Corporation contract to Party B. Both parties will maintain professional courtesy at all company functions. Termination: either party may initiate dissolution after 14-day minimum period. Both must agree on public narrative for separation. Confidentiality: the temporary nature of this arrangement remains confidential between parties. Signed. Paige read it 3 times. It was thorough, professional, cold as ice. Exactly what she'd demanded. So why did seeing their future marriage reduced to 7 numbered clauses make her chest feel tight? She shook her head violently. No, absolutely not. She was not going to have feelings about this disaster. Her phone rang. Dawson's name lit up the screen. She considered not answering, considered throwing the phone across the room, considered moving to Alaska and starting a new life as a wilderness guide. She answered. "It's almost 3 in the morning, Kane. You're awake." His voice sounded rough, tired. "I heard you typing. You're reading the contract. How could you possibly?" Paige stopped. "Are you tracking my phone activity? The contract app shows when someone opens the document. Technology, Holloway, not stalking." That's exactly what a stalker would say. "Did you read it?" Paige sat up, pulling her knees to her chest. Through her bedroom window, she could see the Manhattan skyline glittering in the pre-dawn darkness. Somewhere in one of those buildings, Dawson was probably standing at his own window, equally sleepless. "I read it," she said finally. "It's thorough. My attorney is the best." Clause 3. Paige's voice came out sharper than intended. "Physical boundaries." Silence on the other end. "What about it?" Dawson asked carefully. "Define what is necessary for public credibility." More silence. Then, hand-holding. Maybe an arm around your waist at formal events. Brief kisses if the situation demands it, like... He trailed off. "Like tonight," Paige finished. "At the rooftop. Yes. That kiss. That stupid 5-second, completely innocent kiss. that had felt like touching a live electrical current. They were both very carefully not mentioning how that had felt. "Fine," Paige said. "I can handle professional physical contact." "Professional physical contact," Dawson repeated. And was that amusement in his voice? "Is that what we're calling it?" "What else would we call it, Kane?" "I don't know, Holloway. You grabbed my tie pretty aggressively. Some might call that assault." "You pulled me against you in front of half of Manhattan." Paige's voice rose. "You announced an engagement without asking. I know." Dawson's voice cut through her anger, suddenly serious. "I know. I'm sorry. Truly. This whole thing it's a nightmare. And it's my fault." Paige wasn't prepared for an apology, especially not one that sounded genuine. "Oh," she said stupidly. "The contract is designed to protect us both," Dawson continued. 2 weeks minimum gives us time to make this look believable. 90 days maximum means neither of us gets trapped. And you get Daniels. That was always yours anyway. I just had better political connections with the CEO. You're admitting I deserved that contract? I'm admitting you're a better designer than me, Dawson said quietly. I've always known that. You're more creative, more innovative, more willing to take risks. I just knew how to play the corporate game better. Paige's throat felt tight. In 3 years of vicious professional rivalry, Dawson had never once acknowledged her talent. Never once admitted she was good at what she did. "Why are you telling me this now?" she whispered. "Because in 12 hours you're going to be my wife," Dawson said. "Temporarily, legally, whatever. And I owe you honesty. You're sacrificing a lot to save my reputation. The least I can do is tell you the truth. You're brilliant at what you do, Paige. I've been threatened by that since the day you walked into Kane and Associates." Paige felt something shift in her chest, something dangerous and complicated. "Don't," she said. "Don't what? Don't be nice to me. Don't be honest. Don't make this complicated. It's already complicated. It doesn't have to be." Paige stood up, pacing her small bedroom. "We sign the contract. We do the wedding. We play nice for a few weeks. We get divorced. We go back to hating each other professionally. Simple." "Simple," Dawson echoed, but he didn't sound convinced. "I'll sign the contract," Paige said firmly. "Send me the digital signature link. And Kane?" "Yes? This doesn't change anything. You're still the arrogant jerk who stole 3 years of clients from me. I'm still going to make your professional life miserable when this is over." She heard him laugh. Actually laugh. A low, genuine sound that did absolutely nothing to her heart rate. Nothing at all. "I wouldn't expect anything less, Holloway. See you at the altar." He hung up. Paige stared at her phone, then at the contract, then at the Manhattan skyline. In 12 hours, she would be Paige Kane. Temporarily, legally, catastrophically. Bellissima Bridal Boutique, Madison Avenue, 9:15 a.m. More to the left. No, your left. Perfect. Now hold still while I pin this. Paige stood on a circular platform in front of a 3-way mirror, wearing a wedding dress that cost more than her car, while a tiny Italian woman named Lucia stabbed pins into the fabric with terrifying precision. Shay sat on a velvet couch behind her, eating complimentary champagne truffles and looking like she was watching the most entertaining reality show of her life. "This is insane," Paige muttered. "Completely insane." "Insane?" Shay popped another truffle. "This is the greatest thing that's ever happened. You're marrying Dawson Kane. Dawson Kane. The man you've spent 3 years calling that insufferable corporate robot. It's fake, Shay. Fake marriage to your hot enemy? That's literally a romance novel trope. This is incredible. It's a nightmare. You're wearing a $12,000 wedding dress and marrying a gorgeous architect who looks like he stepped out of a cologne commercial. This is not a nightmare. This is the universe giving you a gift." Paige caught her reflection in the mirror. The dress was beautiful, simple, elegant, off the shoulder with a fitted bodice and flowing skirt. Lucia had somehow found something that fit perfectly despite the overnight notice. She looked like a real bride. That was the problem. "I don't love him," Paige said quietly. "Yet," Shay corrected. "Ever. This ends in 2 weeks, maybe 3. Then we divorce and go back to hating each other." "Right, because nothing says permanent hatred like a temporary marriage contract and coordinated public appearances." "Whose side are you on?" "Team Chaos," Shay said cheerfully. "Always. Also, speaking of chaos, Vivian Kane called me this morning." Paige's head snapped around so fast, Lucia yelped and nearly stabbed her with a pin. She what? Called me. Wants to know your favorite flowers, your favorite songs, your dietary restrictions, and whether you prefer orchids or roses for the centerpieces. I told her orchids because I know you're allergic to roses. I'm not allergic to. You are now. I'm building you a fake backstory. You're welcome. Shay, also, I may have told her you're a vegetarian. I ate a burger yesterday. New bride, new you. Shay grinned. Besides, this way you can avoid Vivian's weird salmon thing she serves at every event. Trust me, I'm doing you a favor. The boutique door chimed. Paige's stomach dropped as Vivian Kane herself swept in, wearing a cream Chanel suit and carrying approximately 15 shopping bags. My beautiful daughter-in-law! Vivian air-kissed both of Paige's cheeks, somehow managing not to disturb a single pin. The dress is perfection. Lucia, you're a miracle worker. Mrs. Kane, Paige started. Vivian, she corrected warmly. We're family now, and I brought accessories. She began unpacking bags with the efficiency of a military operation. Shoes, Valentino, size 7. Jewelry, my grandmother's pearl set. Something borrowed. Veil, cathedral length. Very classic. And she produced a small blue box. Something blue. Paige stared at the unmistakable Tiffany blue box. Mrs. Kane, Vivian, this is too much. Really, the wedding is so sudden and nonsense. Vivian opened the box, revealing a delicate diamond bracelet. My son finally found a woman worthy of him. A woman with fire, talent, and the courage to challenge him. Do you know how long I've waited for this? Guilt crashed over Paige in waves. This woman was so genuinely happy, so excited, and it was all based on a complete lie. Vivian, Paige said carefully, I want you to know that Dawson and we're not. This is all very fast. The best love stories always are, Vivian said, fastening the bracelet around Paige's wrist. I knew Dawson's father for 3 weeks before he proposed. Everyone said we were crazy. We've been married 34 years. Paige felt sick. Sometimes, Vivian continued, her voice softening, we spend so much time protecting ourselves, building walls, pretending we don't care, that we forget to let ourselves feel. I've watched you and my son circle each other for 3 years. All that arguing, that passion, that was never hate, darling. That was two brilliant people too stubborn to admit they were attracted to each other. That's not, Paige started. Give him a chance, Vivian said gently. Give yourself a chance. I know Dawson can be difficult, arrogant, impossible, but underneath all that armor, he's a good man, a loyal man. And whether either of you wants to admit it, you're perfect for each other. Shay was watching this entire exchange with wide eyes and a face that clearly said, I told you so. The boutique door chimed again. Dawson walked in. Time did something weird and slow. Paige saw him stop in the doorway, saw his eyes find her on the platform in the wedding dress, saw something flash across his face, surprise maybe, or something deeper, before he recovered his usual controlled expression. Sorry I'm late, he said. Traffic and I had to pick up. He held up a garment bag. My suit. Let me see, let me see. Vivian practically bounced over to him. Dawson unzipped the bag, revealing a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit. Classic, Vivian approved. Elegant. Perfect now, she looked between them. I'll leave you two alone to talk. Final preparations. Wedding is at 3. Don't be late. She gathered her bags and swept out, Lucia following with a knowing smile. Shay stood up slowly. I'm going to get more truffles from the shop down the street far away from here. She practically ran out. Paige and Dawson stood in the empty boutique, her in a wedding dress, him holding his wedding suit. You look, Dawson started. Don't, Paige cut him off. Don't what? Don't tell me I look nice. Don't make this real. Don't. You look terrified, Dawson finished quietly. That's what I was going to say. Paige let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. I am terrified, she admitted. Your mother is so happy, Dawson. She's so genuinely excited. And this is all fake. When we divorce in 2 weeks, it's going to break her heart. Dawson set down his garment bag and walked closer. Not touching her, but close enough that she could smell that sandalwood cologne again. I know, he said. I've been thinking about that all night. And I don't have a good answer. He ran a hand through his hair. A gesture she was learning meant he was stressed. Maybe we tell her the truth now, before the wedding. Take the professional hit. Deal with the consequences. Your career would be destroyed. The Amber situation going viral, then admitting you lied about an engagement? The board would force you out. Maybe I deserve that. Maybe. Paige looked at him steadily. But I already agreed to this mess. I'm not backing out now. We're doing this. Why? Dawson asked. Why are you really doing this, Paige? The Daniels contract? That's not worth this level of sacrifice. Paige was quiet for a long moment. Then, because watching you panic last night was the first time in 3 years I've seen you be human. Not the corporate robot, not the golden boy. Just a scared guy who made a stupid mistake. And maybe I'm an idiot, but I don't want to see you lose everything over one panicked decision. Dawson stared at her. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me, he said finally. Don't get used to it. I still hate you. Right. Professional hatred. The most professional hatred. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. That same infuriating half-smile she'd spent 3 years wanting to erase. Except now, for some reason, it made her stomach flip. So, Dawson said, shall we go get fake married? Absolutely not, Paige said. We're going to go get temporarily legally married. There's a difference. Huge difference. Massive. They stared at each other. The boutique suddenly felt very small and very warm. Paige, Dawson said quietly. Yes? For what it's worth, I'm glad it's you. Glad it's me what? Glad it's you I'm fake marrying. If I had to accidentally engage someone and then actually marry them 12 hours later in front of my entire family, I'm glad it's you. Paige's heart did something complicated and completely unwelcome. That's the weirdest compliment I've ever received, she managed. I'm full of weird compliments today, apparently. Yeah, well. Paige stepped down from the platform, carefully holding the dress. Don't make it a habit, Kane. I have a reputation for hating you to maintain. Same, Holloway, same. As Paige walked toward the changing room, she caught their reflection in the mirror, her in a wedding dress, him in his suit standing in a bridal boutique on a Saturday morning, about to commit to the most insane plan either of them had ever attempted. It should have felt wrong. It should have felt like a disaster. Instead, it felt like standing at the edge of something enormous and terrifying and maybe, possibly, potentially, exciting, which was absolutely, definitely, completely ridiculous, right? Kane Residence, Upper East Side, 2:45 p.m. Paige stood in an upstairs guest room, fully dressed, staring at herself in a full-length mirror. The wedding dress fit perfectly. The pearls were elegant. The bracelet caught the light beautifully. Her makeup was flawless. Vivian had hired a professional. Her hair was swept up in an elegant twist. She looked like a real bride. In 15 minutes, she would walk downstairs into a room full of 70 people and marry Dawson Kane. Temporarily, legally, insanely. A knock on the door made her jump. It's me, Shay's voice called. Can I come in? Yes. Shay entered, looking stunning in a rose gold dress. She stopped when she saw Paige. Wow, she breathed. You look like I'm about to make the biggest mistake of my life. Like you're about to marry the love of your life, Shay corrected. Fake or not, Paige, you look happy. Actually happy. When's the last time you looked this alive? Paige turned away from the mirror. This is fake, Shay. I keep saying that and nobody listens. Maybe you're the one not listening. Shay came closer, adjusting Paige's veil. 3 years. 3 years of arguing and competing and driving each other crazy. And in all that time, have you ever dated anyone seriously? That's not. Has Dawson? Paige thought about it. Amber had been casual. There'd been a few others, but never anything serious. Never anything that lasted. That proves nothing, she said. It proves you've both been too obsessed with each other to notice anyone else. Shay squeezed her hand. I'm not saying this fake marriage will become real, but maybe, just maybe, being forced to spend time together without the professional rivalry will show you something you've been too stubborn to see, which is that sometimes the person who drives you craziest is the person who knows you best. Before Paige could respond, another knock sounded. Miss Holloway? An unfamiliar voice. It's time. Shay squeezed her hand once more. Ready? No, Paige thought. Not even remotely. Yes, she said aloud. She followed Shay down the hallway, down the grand staircase. The Kane residence was enormous. Old money elegance with modern updates. The ceremony was set up in the main living room, which had been transformed with white flowers and silk drapes. Through the doorway, Paige could see the chairs filled with guests, Vivian in the front row, beaming, Dawson's father, tall, distinguished, looking vaguely bemused, colleagues from the firm, friends, family, 70 witnesses to a fake marriage. The music started, something classical and beautiful. Shay went first, walking down the makeshift aisle with practiced grace. Then it was Paige's turn. She stepped into the doorway. Every head turned. And there, at the end of the aisle, stood Dawson Kane. He was wearing the charcoal suit. His hair was perfectly styled. But what caught her attention was his face, the way he looked at her as she started walking, not with his usual arrogance or competitive edge. He looked nervous, awed, maybe even a little bit stunned. Their eyes locked. Paige forgot to be terrified, forgot this was fake, forgot everything except the fact that she was walking toward Dawson Kane in a wedding dress, and he was looking at her like she was the only person in the room. Step by step, she moved closer. The guests became background noise. The flowers and decorations blurred. Just her, just him, just this impossible moment. She reached the end of the aisle. Dawson extended his hand. Paige took it. His fingers wrapped around hers. Warm, steady, real. The officiant, a kind-faced woman in judicial robes, smiled at them both. "Dearly beloved," she began, "we are gathered here today." Paige barely heard the words. She was too focused on Dawson's hand holding hers, on the way his thumb moved gently against her palm, on the fact that this felt nothing like a fake ceremony. "Do you, Dawson Michael Kane, take Paige Alexandra Holloway to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Dawson said, his voice steady and clear. "And do you, Paige Alexandra Holloway, take Dawson Michael Kane to be your lawfully wedded husband?" This was it. Last chance to stop this, last chance to run. Paige looked into Dawson's storm-gray eyes. "I do," she said. "Then by the power vested in me by the state of New York, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Dawson stepped closer. His hands came up to cup her face gently. "Temporary," he whispered, so only she could hear. "Just for show. Just for show," Paige echoed. He kissed her, and just like the first time, electricity, fire, something that felt nothing like temporary and everything like real. The room erupted in applause. They broke apart, both slightly dazed. "Ladies and gentlemen," the officiant announced, "I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Kane." More applause. Music. Vivian was crying happy tears. Dawson took Paige's hand again, leading her back down the aisle. Guests throwing flower petals, cameras flashing. They emerged into the foyer, alone for just a moment before the guests would flood out for the reception. "Well," Dawson said, "we did it. We did it," Paige agreed. "You're my wife. Temporarily." "Right. Temporarily." They stared at each other, the weight of what they'd just done settling over them. "Dawson?" Paige said quietly. "Yes? That kiss was for show," he finished quickly. "Just for show, like we agreed." "Right, of course, for show." But they both knew that was a lie. That kiss had been a lot of things. But fake wasn't one of them. The reception was a whirlwind. Paige had been hugged by dozens of relatives, posed for endless photos, and smiled so much her face hurt, all while pretending this was real. "Your Aunt Margaret is coming," Dawson murmured in her ear. "She'll ask about grandchildren. I apologize in advance. We've been married 90 minutes. Sure enough, a woman in purple descended on them. When can we expect little Kanes? Dawson's hand tightened on Paige's waist. She could feel him trying not to laugh. We're taking things one day at a time, Paige said smoothly. Smart girl, you have fire. That's what a Kane man needs. Margaret patted her arm before drifting away. I am so sorry, Dawson said. My family is insane. They're sweet, Paige said, surprising herself. Overwhelming but sweet. The DJ's voice boomed. Ladies and gentlemen, their first dance as husband and wife, Mr. and Mrs. Kane. Applause erupted. A spotlight hit them. I didn't know we were doing this, Paige said. Mom planned everything. Dawson extended his hand. Just follow my lead. They walked to the center of the floor. A slow, romantic song began. Dawson pulled her close, one hand on her waist, the other holding her hand. They began to move. You're a good dancer, Paige said. Ballroom lessons at 14. Dawson spun her gently. You're not bad yourself. I'm faking it. Story of the day. They moved in comfortable silence, finding their rhythm. Paige was acutely aware of how perfectly they fit together. Everyone's watching, she said quietly. I know. They think this is real. Your mother is crying again. Dawson's voice dropped. When we divorce, she's going to be devastated. Maybe we tell her the truth after a few weeks. Say we rushed into things. She'll blame herself. Then what do we do? Dawson guided them in slow circles. We make these next few weeks count. Make her happy. And when it ends, we make sure she knows it wasn't her fault. Their eyes met, held. The song swelled. Dawson spun her, then dipped her slightly. When he pulled her back up, they were barely an inch apart. Dawson, she breathed. We should make it look good, he said quietly. For the audience. He leaned in slowly. She didn't pull away. When his lips touched hers, it was softer than the ceremony kiss. Slower. His hand slid to the small of her back, pulling her flush against him. Paige's fingers curled into his suit jacket. The world disappeared. When they broke apart, Dawson looked as dazed as she felt. The song ended. Applause erupted. That was, Paige started. For show, Dawson finished quickly. Obviously, neither of them moved. Reception, later, 6 p.m. Shay materialized beside Paige at the bar. That kiss was not fake. It was completely fake, Paige said automatically. I've known you 8 years. You've never looked at anyone the way you just looked at Dawson. Your temporary husband is being cornered by his father. He looks like he needs rescue. Paige made her way over. She could hear fragments of the conversation. Concerns about this timeline, Richard was saying. Secret dating, then marriage in 24 hours? It's reckless. Paige stepped up, slipping her hand into Dawson's. Mr. Kane, I hope I'm not interrupting. Please call me Richard. I was just expressing concerns about the speed of this marriage. I understand, Paige said honestly. It is fast, but I've spent 3 years working with your son, arguing with him, competing with him, and somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing just the rivalry and started seeing who he actually is. Truth was slipping out despite herself. He's brilliant, dedicated, impossible sometimes, Richard laughed, but he cares about quality and integrity. And I realized that all that arguing was masking something else. Dawson's hand tightened around hers. Which is? Richard asked. That I didn't want to imagine my life without him in it, Paige said quietly. Even if he drives me crazy. Richard studied them, then smiled genuinely. That's the most honest thing I've heard all day. Welcome to the family, Paige. He walked away. Paige pulled her hand back. Sorry. Your father seemed upset. That was perfect, Dawson interrupted. What you said about not imagining life without me. Did you mean that? I was improvising. So it was all fake. Obviously. Why? Dawson asked. Did you want it to be real? He looked genuinely confused. 6 hours ago I would have said no, but now, he trailed off. This is all very confusing. There you are, Vivian called. Time for speeches. Reception, speeches, 6:30 p.m. Richard stood to toast. Find someone who challenges you, he said. Paige, you've certainly challenged my son. That's the foundation of a strong marriage. To the happy couple. Many years, Dawson repeated quietly. Not just 2 weeks. Speech, speech, someone called. Dawson stood, pulling Paige up. The room quieted. I'm not much for speeches, he began. But today deserves words. He turned to Paige, taking her hands. Paige has been a thorn in my side for 3 years. She's questioned my designs and made my professional life difficult. Laughter rippled through the crowd. But she's also pushed me to be better, Dawson continued seriously. Every argument, every time she proved me wrong, she made me reconsider and improve. And somehow, in all that warfare, I fell in. He stopped abruptly. The room held its breath. Paige's heart hammered. In partnership with her, Dawson finished. To my brilliant, infuriating, extraordinary wife. Applause erupted. Had he almost said he fell in love? Under the table, his hand found hers. That was close, he murmured. Too close. But neither pulled away. Reception, terrace, 9 p.m. They stood on the terrace, taking a break. Manhattan glittered in the distance. Your feet hurt, Dawson observed. How can you tell? You keep shifting your weight. Before she could protest, he bent down, unbuckling her heels. Even fake husbands should prevent foot injuries. The cool stone felt incredible. Thank you. This was supposed to be a disaster, Paige said quietly. But it wasn't. Dawson met her gaze. 6 hours ago, we signed a contract. 2 weeks minimum, then divorce. But right now, I'm having trouble remembering why I thought marrying you was a bad idea. Dawson, I haven't been pretending, he said. Not during that dance, not during the photos. Paige's breath caught. What are you saying? That maybe all that arguing was us being too stubborn to admit we work. You and me, together. This is a terrible idea, Paige whispered. Terrible, Dawson agreed. We have a contract, boundaries. We do. They were standing so close now, neither moved. There you are, Vivian called. Bouquet toss. The spell broke. We should talk, Paige said, about what this means. Tomorrow, Dawson agreed. Tomorrow we figure out what happens next. Car, leaving reception. Midnight. They were showered with rice and rose petals, running to a waiting car. The door closed. Silence. Where are we going? Paige asked. My apartment, Mom arranged it. I have a guest room, very separate. Paige looked at her wedding dress, the ring, Dawson beside her. We're married. We're married. This is insane. Tomorrow we set ground rules, Paige said. Figure out how to navigate this without it getting more complicated. Agreed. But when his hand found hers in the darkness, and her fingers intertwined with his, neither pulled away. Tomorrow they'd be sensible. Tomorrow they'd remember this was fake. But tonight, something between them had fundamentally shifted. Paige woke up in a strange bed, wearing a borrowed t-shirt with a wedding ring on her finger. For a blissful 3 seconds, she thought it had all been a dream. Then reality crashed in. She was married. To Dawson Kane, her worst enemy. As of yesterday, she sat up, taking in the guest room. It was beautiful, modern, minimalist, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Completely impersonal, like a luxury hotel room. Her wedding dress hung on the closet door, still perfect and white and mocking her life choices. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Shay, are you alive? Shay, did you survive the wedding night? Shay, I need details immediately. Shay, also I caught the bouquet, so apparently I'm next, which is terrifying. Paige typed back. Nothing happened. Separate rooms. Very professional. Shay, that's the saddest wedding night I've ever heard of. Shay, you're married to that man. Take advantage. It's fake, Shay. Shay, that kiss at the reception didn't look fake. Shay, the way he looked at you didn't look fake. Shay, the way you looked at him definitely didn't look fake. Paige threw her phone on the bed. Shay was wrong. Everything yesterday had been performance, acting, playing the part, except for the terrace and the car. And every time Dawson had touched her, and she'd felt like she was on fire, she needed coffee and distance, and to remember this was a business arrangement. Paige pulled on the jeans and sweater she'd packed in her overnight bag. Vivian had insisted she bring something for the morning after, and ventured out of the guest room. The penthouse was stunning, open concept, all clean lines and expensive furniture. The kitchen was magazine-worthy, all marble and stainless steel, and standing at the espresso machine, wearing gray sweatpants and a black t-shirt, hair still messy from sleep, was Dawson. He turned when he heard her footsteps. His eyes widened slightly. You're awake, he said. Coffee, Paige managed. Coming right up. He turned back to the machine. How'd you sleep? Fine. You? Terribly. At least she wasn't alone in that. Dawson handed her a perfect cappuccino, the foam topped with an intricate design. You remembered? Paige said, surprised. That you take cappuccinos with extra foam? You order the same thing every morning at the office coffee cart. You pay attention to my coffee order? I pay attention to everything about you. Dawson said it casually, like it wasn't a completely devastating statement. It's hard not to when we've been competing for 3 years. Right. Competition. Paige took a sip. It was perfect. We should talk. About yesterday. About the rules. The contract. Dawson agreed. He gestured to the dining table. Sit. They sat across from each other, coffee between them like a buffer. So, Paige started. Yesterday got complicated. Complicated, Dawson repeated. That's one word for it. We need to reestablish boundaries. Remember what this is. A temporary arrangement to protect both our careers. Nothing more. Nothing more, Dawson echoed, but something flickered in his eyes. The contract specifies separate residences. I should go back to my apartment. You should, Dawson agreed, But my mother is coming over at noon to drop off wedding gifts. If you're not here, she'll ask questions. Paige groaned. Of course she is. We could tell her you had to go to your place to get more clothes. That we're splitting time between both apartments while we figure out living arrangements. That's actually reasonable. I have my moments. They sipped their coffee in silence. Paige studied Dawson across the table. In casual clothes, sleep-rumpled and unguarded, he looked different. Younger, less intimidating, almost approachable. What? Dawson asked, catching her staring. Nothing. You just look different without the corporate armor. So do you. His gray eyes held hers. Different good or different bad? Just different. Very diplomatic, Mrs. Kane. Hearing that name sent an unwelcome flutter through her chest. Don't call me that. It's legally your name now. Temporarily. Right. Temporarily. Dawson set down his cup. About what I said last night on the terrace. Paige's stomach tightened. What about it? I meant it. I haven't been pretending. The dance, the kiss, the way He stopped, running a hand through his hair. This is harder than I thought. Dawson. No, let me finish. He leaned forward. I spent 3 years convinced I hated you. You were the obstacle, the competition, the person making my life difficult. But yesterday, watching you handle my family, seeing you in that dress, dancing with you, his voice dropped. I realized I don't hate you. I don't think I ever did. Paige's heart was pounding. Then what do you feel? I don't know. That's the problem. This was supposed to be simple. 2 weeks, play pretend, get divorced. But nothing about you has ever been simple. Dawson, we can't. Can't what? Feel something? Too late. He stood abruptly, pacing to the windows. I know this is fake. I know we signed a contract. But tell me honestly, did yesterday feel fake to you? Paige opened her mouth, closed it. Every instinct screamed to lie, to protect herself, to maintain the boundaries. No, she said quietly. It didn't. Dawson turned, his expression intense. Then what do? We stick to the contract. We remember this ends. We don't let feelings complicate things. Feelings are already complicating things. Then we uncomplicate them. Paige stood too, frustrated. Dawson, your mother thinks this is real. Your father gave us his blessing. 70 people watched us get married. When we divorce, it's going to hurt people. We can't make it worse by actually developing feelings. What if it's too late for that? The words hung between them. Paige's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. Vivian. On my way, darlings. Be there in 30 minutes. Can't wait to see my favorite newlyweds. Your mother, Paige said unnecessarily. Perfect timing, Dawson muttered. Dawson's penthouse living room, 11:45 a.m. They'd spent the next hour in careful avoidance. Paige had showered and changed. Dawson had done the same. They'd cleaned up the kitchen. They'd made small talk about nothing important, all while the tension from their earlier conversation simmered beneath the surface. When the doorbell rang, Paige took a breath and plastered on a smile. Vivian swept in with 3 shopping bags and a massive floral arrangement. My darlings. She kissed both their cheeks. You look radiant. Marriage agrees with you both. She set down the bags. I brought breakfast, well, brunch now, from that lovely French place. And these, she gestured to the bags, are cards and gifts from guests who couldn't make it yesterday. You're very loved, you know. Thank you, Vivian, Paige managed. Now sit. Tell me everything. How was your first night as husband and wife? Did you sleep well? Vivian winked. Or not sleep at all? Paige wanted to sink into the floor. Mom, Dawson said, his ears turning slightly red. Maybe we could not— Oh, hush, I'm allowed to be curious. Vivian unpacked pastries and coffee. You know, your father and I barely left our hotel room for 3 days after our wedding. Mom. What? It's natural. You're newlyweds. Paige caught Dawson's eye. He looked as mortified as she felt. We slept fine, Paige said quickly. The penthouse is beautiful, very comfortable. Good. Vivian arranged pastries on plates. Now I've been thinking about your honeymoon. Honeymoon, Paige and Dawson said simultaneously. Of course. You can't get married and not have a honeymoon. I'm thinking 2 weeks in Italy, or the Greek islands, somewhere romantic. Mom, we can't take 2 weeks off work, Dawson protested. Nonsense. Your partners at the firm, well, one partner and one senior designer who should be partner. She gave Dawson a pointed look. You can arrange the time. Vivian, that's incredibly generous, but… Paige started. No buts. You're taking a honeymoon. It's decided. Vivian pulled out her phone. I'll have my assistant send you options. You can pick whichever you like. Dawson and Paige exchanged helpless looks. For the next hour, they sat through Vivian's plans. Honeymoon destinations, moving timelines. She thought they should combine apartments, holiday schedules, and subtle hints about grandchildren. By the time she left, Paige was exhausted. I'm sorry, Dawson said as soon as the door closed. She's a lot. She's sweet. Overwhelming, but sweet. Paige collapsed on the couch. A honeymoon, though? How do we get out of that? We don't. We go. Excuse me. Dawson sat beside her. Think about it. 2 weeks away from the office, away from people who know us. We can figure out what this, he gestured between them, actually is, without the pressure. Dawson, that's insane. We'd be playing house in Italy for 2 weeks. We're already playing house here. That's different. How? Paige didn't have an answer. The contract says we need to maintain the appearance of marriage, Dawson continued. A honeymoon does that. And honestly, maybe we need the distance from real life to think clearly. Or maybe we'd be making things worse. Maybe. Dawson turned to face her. But I'm willing to risk it if you are. Paige studied his face. He was serious. And maybe he was right. Maybe getting away from the pressure of family and work would help them figure out what was real and what was performance. Fine, she said. We'll go on the fake honeymoon. But we maintain boundaries. Separate rooms. No, she waved her hand. No crossing lines. Agreed, Dawson said. But when his gaze dropped to her lips for just a second before meeting her eyes again, they both knew those boundaries were already dangerously close to shattering. Dawson's penthouse late afternoon, 4 p.m. Vivian had finally left. Paige should go back to her apartment, should put distance between herself and Dawson. Instead, she found herself in his kitchen, helping him cook dinner. You cook? She'd asked when he'd started pulling out ingredients. Surprised? You always order takeout at the office. Because I'm working. At home I like to cook, it's relaxing. Now they were making pasta together, him handling the sauce, her preparing the salad. It was domestic and comfortable and completely surreal. Tell me something I don't know about you, Dawson said suddenly. What? We've worked together for 3 years, but we've only ever competed. I don't actually know basic things about you. He stirred the sauce. So, tell me something real. Paige considered. I wanted to be an artist. Before architecture and design. Really? I painted constantly as a kid, but my parents said art wasn't practical, wouldn't pay bills. So I went into architecture, something creative but practical. Do you still paint? Sometimes. Late at night when I can't sleep. She chopped tomatoes. What about you? Tell me something real. Dawson was quiet for a moment. I never wanted to work at my mother's firm. Paige stopped chopping. What? I wanted to start my own company. Something smaller, more focused on sustainable design. But Dad had a heart attack my junior year of college. Mom needed help running things, so I came to work for her. He tasted the sauce, adjusted the seasoning. I've been there ever since. Do you regret it? Sometimes. Most times. He looked at her. Until you showed up and made work interesting again. By arguing with you constantly. By pushing me, challenging me, making me work harder. He smiled slightly. You made me better, Paige, even when I hated admitting it. The kitchen suddenly felt very small, very warm. Dawson? I know, boundaries. He turned off the stove. Dinner's ready. They ate at the dining table, continuing to trade stories. Paige learned that Dawson had played piano for 10 years but quit in high school. That he was allergic to shellfish but loved sushi. That his favorite movie was an obscure French film about architecture. Dawson learned that Paige had a younger brother in California she rarely saw. That she was afraid of heights despite working with skyscrapers. That she'd once backpacked through Europe for 3 months after college. With each story, each revelation, the person across the table became less like her rival and more like someone she actually wanted to know. It was dangerous. After dinner, they ended up on the couch with wine, the Manhattan skyline twinkling outside the windows. This is nice, Paige said without thinking. It is, Dawson agreed. Weird, but nice. We're friends now, aren't we? Are we? He sounded genuinely curious. I think so, or at least we're not enemies anymore. Progress. Dawson shifted, his thigh touching hers on the couch. Paige, What I said this morning, about not pretending. Dawson, don't. I need to say this. He set down his wine glass. Yesterday when we were dancing, when I almost said, he stopped. I need you to know I wasn't lying, or acting, or playing a part. Paige's heart was racing. What are you saying? I'm saying that somewhere between hating you and marrying you something changed, and I don't know what to do about it. We follow the contract. We maintain boundaries. We stop lying to ourselves. I'm not lying. Yes, you are. Dawson turned to face her fully. You felt it yesterday. The dancing, the kiss, the way we fit together. Tell me you didn't feel that. It doesn't matter what I felt. It's the only thing that matters. He reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The same gesture from last night. Tell me honestly, do you want this to be just business, just a contract? Paige's breath caught. She should say yes, should maintain the boundaries, should protect both of them from complications. No, she whispered, but I should. Why? Because this ends, Dawson. 2 weeks, 90 days, whatever. It ends. The contract says so, and when it does, we go back to work, to competing, to normal. What if I don't want normal? His hand cupped her cheek now, thumb brushing her cheekbone. What if I want this? This is fake. Does this feel fake? He leaned closer, his face inches from hers. Dawson, we can't. Can't what? Kiss my own wife? Temporary wife. Still counts. The air between them was electric. Paige could feel his breath against her lips, could see the intensity in his gray eyes, could hear her own heart pounding. This breaks the contract, she said weakly. Clause 3 says physical intimacy for public credibility. We could argue this is practice. That's a terrible argument. I know. He smiled slightly. But I'm going to kiss you anyway, unless you tell me no. Paige knew she should say no, should pull back, should remember all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Instead, she closed the distance between them. The kiss was different from yesterday. Yesterday had been performance, witnesses, cameras. This was just them. No audience, no pressure, just honest and raw and real. Dawson's hand slid into her hair, angling her head for better access. Paige's hands gripped his shirt, pulling him closer. The kiss deepened, intensified, became something that felt nothing like a business arrangement and everything like wanting. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Paige's mind was spinning. That was, she started. A terrible idea, Dawson finished. Completely terrible. We should establish it can't happen again. Definitely can't happen again. But neither of them moved apart. Dawson's hand was still in her hair. Paige's hands were still fisted in his shirt. Paige, he said softly, I know this is complicated. I know we have a contract, but I can't pretend anymore. I don't want to. What do you want? Honestly? He rested his forehead against hers. I want to see where this goes. Real or fake, temporary or not. I want to try. Paige's throat felt tight. That's the scariest thing you could have said. I know. If we do this, if we actually try, we could ruin everything. The friendship we're building, our working relationship, everything. Or, Dawson said quietly, we could find something neither of us expected. Paige pulled back to look at him. His eyes were honest, vulnerable. This wasn't the corporate Dawson she'd competed with for 3 years. This was someone real. I'm terrified, she admitted. Me too. What if it doesn't work? What if it does? They stared at each other, the weight of the decision hanging between them. We'd need new rules, Paige said finally. Not the contract rules, real rules. About what this means. About expectations. Agreed. And we're honest. Completely honest. No games, no pretending. Deal. And if it doesn't work, if this falls apart, we end things cleanly. No drama at the office. Deal. Dawson smiled slightly. Any other demands? Paige thought for a moment. One more. What? Kiss me again. Dawson didn't hesitate. This kiss was slower, sweeter, full of promise and possibility. When they broke apart, both were smiling. So, Dawson said, are we doing this? Actually doing this? I think we are. Paige shook her head. This is insane. Completely insane. We're going to regret this. Probably. But I want to try anyway. Me too. Dawson pulled her close, tucking her against his side. For what it's worth, I think we might be good at this. At what? Breaking our own contract? At being together. Real together, not fake together. Paige settled into his warmth, looking out at the Manhattan skyline. 24 hours ago, she'd been single. rivals with Dawson Kane, living her normal life. Now she was married, falling for her former enemy, and potentially making the biggest mistake of her life. Or maybe, just maybe, the best decision. Only time would tell. The Italian sun was warm on Paige's skin as she stood on the balcony of their villa, overlooking the Mediterranean. 2 weeks in paradise. 2 weeks of pretending to be on a honeymoon that had somehow stopped being pretend. Behind her, she heard Dawson moving around the bedroom. They'd maintained separate rooms for exactly 3 days before that boundary dissolved too. Coffee? Dawson appeared beside her, handing her a cappuccino. He was wearing linen pants and nothing else, his hair still messy from sleep. You're spoiling me, Paige said, taking the cup. That's the plan. He wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. What do you want to do today? This, exactly this. They'd spent 2 weeks exploring the coast, eating incredible food, and slowly dismantling every wall they'd built between them. Paige had learned that Dawson was funny when he wasn't trying to be professional, that he was generous and thoughtful, that he remembered small details like how she took her coffee, or that she preferred the left side of the bed. And somewhere between Venice and Florence, between stolen kisses in museums and late-night conversations on balconies, she'd fallen completely in love with him. She hadn't said it yet, neither had he. But it hung in the air between them, this enormous truth neither was quite brave enough to speak. We should talk about going home, Dawson said quietly. Do we have to? Flight's tomorrow morning. Paige turned in his arms to face him. Back to reality. Back to the office. Back to my mother's weekly dinners. Back to pretending we're not. He stopped. Not what? Dawson looked at her, his gray eyes intense. Not completely in love with each other. Paige's breath caught. Dawson, I love you, he said simply. I've been trying to figure out when it happened. Maybe it was when you grabbed my tie at the rooftop. Maybe it was watching you handle my father at the reception. Maybe it was every argument we've had for 3 years that I mistook for hate. He cupped her face gently. But I know it now. I'm in love with you, Paige. Tears pricked her eyes. You're supposed to say that at the end, after we overcome the big crisis. This is real life, not a movie, and I needed you to know before we go back. His thumb brushed away a tear that had escaped. You don't have to say it back, I just needed. I love you too, Paige interrupted. I've been terrified to admit it, because this was supposed to be fake and temporary, and now it's the most real thing in my life. Dawson kissed her, soft, sweet, full of promise. When they broke apart, both were smiling. So what do we do? Paige asked. The contract technically ends in a week. We tear up the contract, we stay married, we make this real. Your mother will be thrilled. My mother already thinks this is real. Dawson laughed. She's been planning our 5-year anniversary party. We've been married 3 weeks. I know, it's terrifying and perfect. Paige's phone buzzed on the table. She ignored it. It buzzed again and again. You should check that, Dawson said. Paige grabbed her phone. 7 missed calls from Shay, 12 texts, 3 voicemails. Her stomach dropped. Something's wrong. She opened the texts. Shay, call me now. Shay, Paige, this is serious. Shay, there's a video. Shay, it's everywhere. Shay, I'm so sorry, the last text was a link. Paige clicked it with shaking hands. It was a video from the rooftop bar, the night Dawson had announced their engagement. But this wasn't the public confrontation with Amber. This was from earlier in the evening, before the announcement. Someone had recorded Dawson and Paige talking, clearly arguing, with Dawson saying something that looked damning without context. The video cut to Dawson grabbing Paige, announcing the engagement, then cut to them in the car afterward, clearly visible through the window, with Paige saying something that looked like, "This is fake." The caption read, "Fake engagement exposed. Architects stage marriage for career advancement." The video had 2 million views, and it was trending. "No," Paige whispered. "No, no, no." Dawson took the phone, watched the video, and went pale. How did they? It doesn't matter. Paige felt sick. Everyone knows, the whole company, your parents, everyone. Her phone rang. Vivian's name lit up the screen. Paige answered with shaking hands. "Vivian, is it true?" Vivian's voice was cold, hurt. "Tell me it's not true. Vivian, please let me explain. Did you fake an engagement? Did you lie to us? Did you lie at your own wedding?" It's not. It started as... Paige couldn't form words. I trusted you, Vivian said, her voice breaking. I welcomed you into our family. I thought... She made a choked sound. Richard is devastated. Dawson's father gave you his blessing, welcomed you with open arms, and this entire time it was a lie. Mrs. Kane, please. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear anything from either of you. The line went dead. Paige stared at the phone. Dawson's phone started ringing. His father. He answered, stepped away, but Paige could hear fragments. Incredibly disappointed. The company's reputation. How could you lie? When Dawson hung up, his face was ashen. Dad's calling an emergency board meeting. Tomorrow morning. They're considering removing me as partner. What? The board thinks I staged a fake marriage for professional advancement. It's an ethics violation. He ran a hand through his hair. They want me out. Paige felt the world tilting. This is my fault. If I hadn't agreed. We both agreed. Dawson pulled her close. We'll fix this. We'll tell them the truth. That it started fake but became real. They won't believe us. That video makes it look planned, calculated. Then we'll make them believe. He tilted her chin up. Paige, I love you. That's real. Everything in Italy was real. We'll prove it. But Paige's phone was exploding with messages. Colleagues, friends, news outlets requesting comment, and one text that made her blood run cold. Amber, enjoy the fallout. You deserve each other. She'd done this. Amber had leaked the video, probably sold it to gossip sites for revenge. We need to go home, Paige said. Now, we need to do damage control. JFK Airport, New York. Next morning, they'd caught a red-eye flight. Neither had slept. Paige had spent the entire flight reading articles about their fake marriage scandal, entertainment sites, architectural trade publications. Even the local news had picked it up. Prominent NYC architects faked marriage for career boost wedding scam. Inside the fake romance that fooled everyone. Kane and Associates under fire after marriage fraud revelation. By the time they landed, Paige wanted to throw her phone into the ocean. A crowd of reporters waited outside the terminal. Mr. Kane, is it true your marriage is fake? Paige, did you stage the wedding for professional advancement? Are you getting divorced? Dawson grabbed Paige's hand, pushing through the crowd to a waiting car. They didn't answer any questions. Inside the car, Paige finally broke. This is a disaster, a complete disaster. We'll fix it, Dawson said, but he sounded less certain now. How? Your mother won't talk to us. Your father wants you removed from the company. Our colleagues think we're frauds. How do we fix that? I don't know. Dawson's hand tightened on hers. But we will. Together. Paige wanted to believe him. But as they drove through Manhattan, her phone continued buzzing with messages, most of them not kind, and she felt everything they'd built crumbling around them. Kane and Associates conference room, 10 a.m. The emergency board meeting was brutal. 8 board members sat around a massive table, all looking at Dawson with varying degrees of disappointment and anger. Richard Kane sat at the head, his expression unreadable. Let me get this straight, board member Helen Marsh said, her voice icy. You announced a fake engagement to avoid embarrassment from an ex-girlfriend. Then you actually married this woman. She gestured dismissively at Paige, in front of 70 witnesses, including your parents. All while lying about the nature of your relationship. It's more complicated than that, Dawson started. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, you committed fraud. You lied to your family. You damaged this company's reputation. The press is calling us a joke. The engagement started as a mistake. Paige spoke up, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. But the marriage became real. What we feel for each other is real. Convenient, another board member muttered. It's the truth, Dawson said firmly. Yes, I panicked at that rooftop bar. Yes, I made a stupid announcement without thinking. But everything after that, the wedding, the relationship, the commitment, that's real. You signed a contract. Helen pulled out a document. Paige's stomach dropped. A temporary marriage contract, 2 weeks minimum, 90 days maximum, with specified terms for dissolution. That doesn't sound real to me. Where did you get that? Dawson demanded. Someone leaked it to the press. It's already online. Helen looked disgusted. You reduced marriage to a business arrangement. You made a mockery of commitment. And now you expect us to believe you're in love? We are in love. Paige said desperately. The contract was insurance, protection, but it doesn't reflect what we actually became. Then why didn't you tear it up? Richard spoke for the first time, his voice heavy with disappointment. If your feelings changed, why did you keep up the charade? Because we were scared, Dawson admitted. Because this happened so fast and we didn't trust it at first. But Dad, I love her. That's not fake. What I feel for Paige is the most real thing in my life. Richard looked at his son for a long moment. I believe you love her. What I don't believe is that this marriage is ethical or appropriate for someone in your position. Dad, the board has voted, Helen interrupted. Effective immediately, you're on leave pending further investigation. If we determine your actions have damaged the company's reputation beyond repair, we'll vote on permanent removal. You can't do this, Dawson said, but his voice lacked conviction. We can. We have. Helen stood. Meeting adjourned. The board members filed out. Richard lingered, looking at his son with such sadness that Paige felt tears burn her eyes. I'm disappointed in you, Richard said quietly. Not because you made a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. But because you lied to your mother. You know what she went through with her parents' divorce, how much she values honesty in marriage, and you looked her in the eye and lied. I'm sorry, Dawson said, his voice breaking. Sorry doesn't fix this. Richard walked out. The conference room was silent. Paige and Dawson sat alone, the weight of what they'd lost crushing down on them. I've destroyed everything, Dawson said finally. My career, my family, everything. We'll fix this, Paige said, but even she didn't believe it anymore. Dawson looked at her, his eyes hollow. Maybe we should. Should what? End this. Get divorced. Go back to how things were. Paige felt like she'd been slapped. What? Look at what we've caused. My parents won't speak to me. I might lose my partnership. Your reputation is trash, too. Everyone thinks you married me for career advancement. I don't care about my reputation. I care about you. Maybe you shouldn't. Dawson stood, pacing to the windows. Maybe this was a mistake from the beginning. We rushed into something neither of us was ready for. Dawson, don't do this. Paige stood too, her voice shaking. Don't let them make you doubt what we have. What do we have, Paige? 3 weeks of pretending that became something real? Is that enough to justify all this damage? Yes. Tears were streaming down her face now. This morning you told me you loved me. You said we'd make this real. Was that a lie? No, but maybe love isn't enough. The words hung between them like a death sentence. So that's it? Paige's voice broke. One crisis and you're giving up? On us? On everything we built? I'm trying to protect you, Dawson said, but he wouldn't look at her. If we divorce now, you can claim I manipulated you. Say the whole thing was my idea. Save your career. I don't want to save my career. I want to save us. There is no us, Dawson's voice rose, raw with pain. There's a fake marriage that became something neither of us expected, and now it's destroying everything. Maybe it's time to admit this was a mistake. Paige felt something break inside her chest. You don't mean that. Maybe I do. Look at me. She grabbed his arm, forcing him to face her. Look me in the eye and tell me you don't love me. Tell me everything in Italy was fake. Tell me you want this to end. Dawson met her eyes. She saw pain, fear, love, all of it warring in his expression. I can't, he whispered. Then don't give up. Paige cupped his face. We made mistakes. We lied. We handled this badly. But what we feel, that's real. Fight for it. Fight for us. For a moment she thought he would. Thought he'd pull her close and promise they'd face this together. Instead, he gently removed her hands from his face. I need time, he said. To think. To figure out what comes next. Dawson, please, Paige, just give me some time. He walked out of the conference room. Paige stood alone, surrounded by empty chairs and shattered dreams, and finally let herself fall apart. Paige's Brooklyn apartment, evening. Shay found her 6 hours later, still in her work clothes, surrounded by tissues, watching the video of their fake engagement on repeat. Oh, honey, Shay said, pulling her into a hug. He gave up, Paige sobbed. We said we loved each other this morning, and by tonight he'd given up. He's scared. He just lost everything. He didn't lose me. I'm right here, but he won't fight for us. Shay held her while she cried. Eventually, when the tears ran out, Paige pulled back. I need to fix this, she said. How? I don't know, but I'm not giving up on him, even if he's given up on us. Paige grabbed her phone. I need to talk to Vivian. If I can get her to understand, maybe she can help Richard see. Paige, she's not answering anyone's calls. Then I'll go to her house. I'll camp on her doorstep if I have to. Paige stood, determination replacing despair. Dawson thinks ending this will fix everything, but he's wrong. The only way forward is together. What if he won't listen? Then I'll make him listen. Paige grabbed her jacket. I married him. For real. Not fake. Real. And I'm not giving up without a fight. Kane Residence, Upper East Side, 9 p.m. Paige stood outside the massive brownstone where she'd gotten married 3 weeks ago. It felt like a lifetime. She rang the doorbell. Richard answered. His face hardened when he saw her. Mrs. Kane, he said coldly. Or should I say Ms. Holloway? I'm not sure what name you're using these days. Mr. Kane, please. I need to speak with Vivian. My wife doesn't want to see you. I understand she's hurt. I understand you're both disappointed. But please let me explain. Explain what? That you lied? That you staged a wedding? We trusted you, Paige. We welcomed you into our family, and you made fools of us all. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Vivian appeared behind Richard, her eyes red from crying. Tell me, Paige. Tell me how you justified lying to us. How you looked me in the eye at your wedding and pretended to love my son when it was all just a business arrangement. It wasn't just business, Paige said desperately. It started that way, yes, but Vivian, I fell in love with him. Really in love. Everything in Italy was real. Everything we said, everything we felt, that was real. How am I supposed to believe that? Vivian's voice broke. How am I supposed to believe anything you say when you've lied from the beginning? Because I'm here. Paige gestured around. I'm here begging you to listen, fighting for your son even though he's given up on us. If this was fake, would I be doing that? Would I be risking your anger and rejection just for a chance to make this right? Vivian wavered. Paige pressed on. I know what your parents' divorce did to you. Dawson told me. I know how much you value honesty in marriage. And I'm so sorry we lied. But please believe me when I say that what Dawson and I have is real. The love is real. And I'm not going to lose it without a fight. Even if he's already given up? Richard asked quietly. Especially then. Paige's voice strengthened. Because he's scared. He's lost his partnership, disappointed his parents, damaged his reputation. He thinks ending our marriage will fix everything. But it won't. The only way through this is together. I just need him to see that. Vivian and Richard exchanged a long look. Come inside, Vivian said finally. Paige sat on the same couch where she'd gotten married 3 weeks ago. Vivian and Richard sat across from her, both guarded, but listening. Start from the beginning, Vivian said. The truth. All of it. Paige took a breath and told them everything. The rooftop confrontation, Dawson's panicked announcement, the contract, the wedding to avoid disaster. But somewhere between the ceremony and Italy, Paige continued, it stopped being fake. I fell in love with your son. The real Dawson, the one who makes terrible jokes and remembers how I take my coffee and looks at me like I'm the most important person in his world. If you loved him, why didn't you tell us? Richard asked. Because we were scared. Because it happened so fast we didn't trust it ourselves. Paige leaned forward. But I'm telling you now, what we have is real, and I refuse to lose it because of mistakes we made at the beginning. My son thinks ending the marriage will fix everything, Vivian said quietly. Your son is wrong. He's hurting and scared, but I don't need protection. I need him. Paige's voice strengthened. Love isn't about running when things get hard. It's about fighting through them together. You really love him, Vivian said. It wasn't a question. With everything I am. Richard stood. The board wants him removed. The company's reputation has taken a hit. Then I'll fix it. I'll go to every board member. I'll hold a press conference, whatever it takes. The press will tear you apart, Richard warned. Let them. I can handle bad press. Paige stood. But I need to know. If I can prove this marriage is real, if I can repair the damage, will you give Dawson another chance? Richard and Vivian exchanged a long look. If you can do all that, Richard said slowly, and convince my stubborn son to stop being an idiot, then yes. Thank you. Paige turned to Vivian. I'm sorry we lied, but I promise. I will spend the rest of my life loving your son the way he deserves. Vivian pulled her into a hug. Then go get him. And tell him his mother said he's being a complete fool. Paige's Brooklyn apartment. 11 p.m. Shay was waiting with 3 friends from the office, Maya, Jordan, and Chris. "War Council," Shay announced. "We're fixing this. You guys, we have work to do," Maya interrupted. They spent 3 hours planning. Maya handled social media. Jordan prepared talking points for board members. Chris reached out to architectural publications. Shay coordinated everything. "The presentation to the board is key," Shay said. "Own the narrative, admit the mistakes, but show them the truth." Paige looked at her friends, this small army fighting for her relationship, and felt strength returning. "Okay," she said. "Let's do this." Kane and Associates conference room. 2 days later, Paige stood before the entire board. Dawson sat in the back, shocked she'd requested this meeting. "Thank you for seeing me," Paige began. "I'm here to set the record straight." She showed them slides. The rooftop photo, their wedding, photos from Italy. "This video shows our worst moment," she said, displaying the leaked footage. "But it doesn't show what came after. It doesn't show us choosing each other despite complications. It doesn't show love developing in chaos." She faced the board directly. "You want to remove Dawson for ethical violations. But what he violated wasn't ethics. It was your expectations. He made a human mistake and tried to fix it messily." She looked at each member. "I'm not asking you to excuse our mistakes. I'm asking you to see the whole story, to recognize that sometimes the most ethical thing is following your heart and facing the consequences." She walked to Dawson and extended her hand. "And I'm asking you to give us a chance to prove what we have is worth believing in." Dawson stared at her hand. The room was silent. "Paige, you don't have to do this." "Yes, I do. Because you're worth fighting for." "We're worth fighting for." Her hand remained steady. "I told you I loved you. That wasn't conditional." Dawson's eyes shone. He took her hand and stood. "I'm sorry. I was wrong to give up. Wrong to think ending this would fix anything. You were scared. But we don't run from each other. We run toward each other." "I love you," he said, loud enough for everyone. "I'm completely in love with my wife, and I don't care who knows it." He kissed her in front of the board, and Paige kissed him back. Several board members were smiling. "The board will deliberate," Richard said. "We'll have our decision by end of day." Dawson's penthouse. Evening. They waited together on the couch. "Whatever they decide," Dawson said, "I'm not letting you go." Paige's phone rang. Richard Kane. "The board has reached a decision," Richard said on speaker. "While your methods were unorthodox, your transparency today demonstrates the integrity we value. Dawson, you're reinstated. With one condition, couples counseling." Paige laughed. "Agreed. And Paige, the board offers you a partnership as well. You've demonstrated exceptional leadership and courage." Paige felt tears streaming. "Yes, absolutely. Welcome to the family, partner. Your mother-in-law expects you both for dinner Sunday." They stared at each other after he hung up. "We did it," Dawson whispered. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply. "So, Mrs. Kane," Dawson said, "ready to be married for real? No contract, no time limit?" "I tore up the contract 2 weeks ago, the day you said you loved me." "Seriously?" "I was all in, Dawson. I love you. Not temporarily. Just completely and permanently." "Good," Paige kissed him. "Because you're stuck with me now." Best mistake I ever made. Epilogue. 1 year later. Kane and Associates' annual gala. Paige adjusted her emerald green gown and surveyed the ballroom. A year ago she'd been single and rivals with Dawson Kane. Now she was married, a partner at the firm, and dancing with her husband at the gala. "What are you thinking?" Dawson asked. "How much has changed?" "The best change." Across the room, Vivian beamed at them. Richard looked proud. Shay danced with her fiancé. The bouquet had worked after all. "Can I tell you something?" Dawson pulled her closer. "Always. A year ago, when I announced we were engaged, I thought it was the worst decision ever. And now? Now I think it was the universe giving me exactly what I needed." He kissed her forehead. "You. Us. This. When did you know you loved me?" "At the wedding. When you walked down that aisle and I couldn't breathe. I knew during the reception. When you admitted you hadn't been pretending. Best fake marriage ever. It was only fake for 6 hours." Dawson pulled out a small box. Inside was a new wedding ring with an inscription. "For real, this time. Forever." "The first ring was chosen in panic," he said, slipping it on her finger. "This one I chose because I love you. Because you're my partner, my best friend, the person who makes me better every day. Paige felt tears threatening. I love you. I love you too. Thank you for not giving up on us. They danced through the song, lost in their own world. Ready to go home? Dawson asked. Our home, Paige agreed. In the car, she leaned against his shoulder. I'm glad you fake engaged me at that rooftop bar. Dawson laughed. That's not a sentence I expected to hear. If you hadn't panicked, we might never have figured out we were perfect for each other. So, disaster romance is our thing? Apparently, but maybe just stick with the romance from now on. Deal. Always together, no more running. Always together. They arrived home, the penthouse they decorated together, filled with both their styles. What are you smiling about? Dawson asked. Us. A year ago, you were my worst enemy. Now you're my favorite person in the entire world. Funny how that worked out. He kissed her, soft and full of promise. I love you, Paige Kane. I love you too, Dawson Kane. And in that moment, with Manhattan glittering outside and their future stretching ahead, Paige knew this was exactly where she was meant to be. The enemy she'd spent 3 years competing with had become the partner she'd spend the rest of her life loving. Funny how things worked out. The end.